Yeah.
Are we all set to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Want to welcome everybody to panelists and attendees to the Tuesday, October 27th, 2020 meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals for Cape Elizabeth. First item of business today is to approve the minutes from August 25th of 2020, the meeting of August 25th. So do we have people had time to review those, and do we have a motion to accept them?
I would move to accept them with the friendly amendments that Matt Caton proposed this afternoon.
Yes. Do we want to, Matt, do you want to read those into the record?
There's just two typos. I do not have that email at hand, but you jumped the gun on me, but there we are.
Okay, it's on page 2, the 5th paragraph, line 3, replace that was incumbent with that it was incumbent. And on page 2, the 7th paragraph, the 5th line, it needs a space before the year 1994.
Thank you.
Okay, so do we have a motion to accept those additions to the minutes?
Joe,
Hold on.
you're on mute.
Joe, unmute.
There we go. Okay, I just had a couple. One, I'm forced to correct the spelling of my name. Shows up a few times incorrectly spelled. Looks like kind of a disease here. It's with B-A-R, not B-E-R. And there one other slightly more substantive change. I think it's on page 6 at the top of the page. It says several board members thought that the town council should review this cumbersome fuzzy language. Mr. Caton added an amendment to the motion to quote the actual language. Actually, it was myself who did that. And then Matt seconded it.
Okay, thank you.
So I would amend Caton to
6.
Barbieri or Berry, depending on how you want to
All
spell
right.
it.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
It's okay.
And where was that other change?
I think it was on, I didn't number my pages and I don't cite them. I think it's on page 6, the top of page 6. And the misspellings are on pages 4, 5, and 6.
It looks like the middle of page 5 is where it is.
Okay.
Is everybody okay with those?
Yes.
Yes.
Actually, you know what? I wasn't there. I
Yes.
can't say anything.
Okay.
So I'm fine with them.
Okay.
Well, I move to approve the minutes as amended by myself and Joe.
Second.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So everybody are yeah? So that motion carries unanimously? Okay. Next. So next, new business. First, let's hear the request of David and Brenda Miley, owners of the property at 886 Shore Road, map U05, lot 2, to enlarge a carriage house in their property based on sections 19-4-3.b.4 of the zoning ordinance. So can we hear from the applicants?
Yes. 1 minute.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Ben, could you give us an update on what's going on with this application?
Yeah. Just 1 second. Okay. All right, I just promoted David Miley to a panelist. Mr. Miley came in to talk to me a few weeks ago about doing an addition on a carriage house on his property. He has a single family dwelling on his property, along with a detached carriage house. And it's a conforming lot in the RC zone. The carriage house was built a long time ago, presumably in the 50s, and it's too close to the side setback. It's angled in a manner so that the side that Mr. Miley wants to do the addition on is it's coming away from the property line, so it doesn't need a variance because it's becoming more conforming in relation to the setback requirement.
Okay, Mr. Miley, would you like to tell us what's going on? What would you like to do?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good evening to everybody. Hopefully everybody's been able to see the packet that we sent and put together that shows the photographs. It's a small addition to the existing carriage house. And there's a little piece of it that is in the setback. But interestingly, as Ben pointed out, this carriage house, we don't know when it was built, but it was there a long time ago. And funny enough, before the lot lines were even established, it was a carriage house to an older property, which was encompassed, not really sure which, but multiple of the lots that are there today. But in any event, we just want to add a little piece on to it coming towards our home. So you cannot, you won't be able to see anything from the road or from really from anywhere, even the neighboring. There's one neighbor, but it's the garage side of their house. So there's really no view, I think. And there are many trees in the way, so you wouldn't be able to see it. So it's not really visible from anywhere. And our concept was to add, it's about 12 feet. And our idea is to pull the elevation that's facing our house towards us by 12 feet and keep it identical so that the carriage house would continue to look like a carriage house from the 50s and maybe older. So that it retains that architectural look and that architectural character. That's probably about it. Ben, have I missed anything that I should be saying to the board here?
Nope, I think that covers it.
All right, thank you. I'd be happy to obviously answer any questions.
Does the board have any questions for the applicant?
I have a question. Mr. Miley, the ordinance that we're looking at, the section of the ordinance requires that we consider the physical condition and type of foundation present, which I'm not sure why that's in here, but it is in here. Is there anything that you can say about the physical condition of the foundation?
The foundation that exists for the existing carriage house looks pretty solid, stood the test of time, been there for quite a long time. But we don't know in the 50s how they built that. The only thing I could probably add would be that when we bought the property, there was a house there that was built, not quite sure when, whether it was around the same time or not, but the foundation was pretty substantial because we raised the house. Interestingly, we couldn't really, it was a house that we felt we couldn't really work with, but we gave what we could to the Builders Bank, and then actually the town of Cape Elizabeth used it for fire drills, and so we got some value out of the house at that time. But when we got to the foundation part of it, there was quite a bit of excavation to be done to remove that, and we imagine at least that the foundation of the carriage house was built in a similar way. It's pretty robust. And the new piece would have obviously a modern code enforcement foundation that would comply with modern standards.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions for the applicant? Go ahead.
Mr. Miley, good evening. Just a couple of queries for you. Is that
Sure.
the building was built in 1950s or earlier, and was there any plumbing or anything that requires like a toilet or a sink in the carriage house after that date?
We don't know the full history of the carriage house, but when we bought it, it had a full plumbing and all of that stuff. It had a chimney and a fireplace, a stove, cooking. You know, it had a bathroom and full plumbing. So I don't know quite what the question is, but it did have all of that when we bought the property. I think we bought it in maybe 2006.
Okay, I had a question for Ben. On the ordinance, I'm looking at paragraph, page 7 for the definition of accessory building or structure. Would you agree that this structure is predates the ordinance? You know, there's a term that you use, grandfather, but apparently that phrase is not in fashion at the moment. So whatever the building is, it predates the requirements for the ordinance.
Yes, I believe that the plumbing and the use of the building predate the requirements of the zoning ordinance.
Okay, thank you both.
I'll just point out there's one attendee with their hand raised. So we will, once we get through these questions, we'll take questions and comments from the attendees. So just hold tight over there.
Sure.
Is anyone else from the board? No? Okay. Okay, moving on. I guess we have people who are on for some public questions. Ben?
Kevin, quickly.
Just real quickly, I wanted to just confirm
Oh.
this is not in the shoreland zone, correct? That's probably a question for Ben. I think that's noted on the documents, but it's just a little tough to read on my computer screen.
That is correct. I'll verify that as we move on a little bit, but I believe that's correct. I don't know if Mr. Miley knows the distance from the ocean that is. The shoreland zone is 250 feet from the ocean.
Yeah, it's well beyond that.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will go to this attendee, Viveka Kwan. You can go ahead if you have a question.
Hello, good evening, everybody. This is Viveka and Eddie Kwan. We're neighbors of David and Brenda Miley. Hi, David.
Hey, Viveka. Hi, Eddie.
Hi.
Yeah.
We have a big sugar maple right at the fence that separates the Miley's property from our property. And it's been there for who knows, 100 years, who knows how old that thing is. But we were just curious what the impact would be on the roots of the tree and on the health of the tree if the construction goes ahead. If you know, or if you have any input or any expert arborist to evaluate that, that would be helpful to know.
I can't really speak professionally to that, but it seems relatively common for construction to occur that distance from a tree. Obviously, if it was directly under the heavy canopy of the tree, it might have some effect, but it seems like it will be, 20 feet away or so, which is relatively common for construction to occur. But I'm not an arborist, and so I'm not really qualified to answer that question.
Okay, the canopy is basically under or above the I guess the envisioned expansion of the carriage house. But I don't know what the plan is. I haven't seen it yet. But from what I just heard from your description, the trunk of the tree is pretty close to the fence, and I would say it's got like 8 feet, maybe within 8 feet of the side of the part of the new expansion, or less. I'm not quite sure. I've never taken a tape measure, but the current side of the carriage house is maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 feet from the property line, and the tree is right at the property line. So I was just curious. It's within 20 feet. So it's, without taking a tape measure, I would say it's well within 20 feet.
Aaron, may I ask a question here?
Yes, you may.
So, Mr. Miley, are you familiar with the tree that Ms. Kwan's talking about?
Yes, I am.
And so I think we are looking at the plan you're describing. So maybe if you could describe where that tree is, it would give us a little better sense of where it is. Is it closer to Shore Road, or is it towards the back of the carriage house where the expansion is going to?
Yeah, it's towards the back of the carriage house. And look, we have a pretty good arborist there that has looked at this particular tree and what we're planning to do. And, look, I'm not an arborist either, but I would concur with Ben's opinion that I think the nearest point of the new foundation to the tree would be 20 feet or no closer. And, with a frost line of 4 feet for the foundation, these types of trees, by the time the roots get to be 20 feet away from the tree, are lower, well lower than that. And our view is, I'm actually a little surprised, our view is that this would not be an issue. But unless there's perhaps, I mean, look, I'm not an expert. I wouldn't profess to be, but this didn't hit our radar as a concern. And, we have a lot of very large trees on the property, and we have an arborist that comes almost every year. Trees grow, and we keep a very close eye on the trees on the property. And this didn't come on our radar as an issue.
So just one second. Sorry, Kevin. To clarify, the tree that we're talking about now is not on your property. It's actually on the neighbor's property, the Kwan's property.
Yes, it is. Maybe 8 or 10 feet even onto the neighbor's property. Or I haven't measured it either. Vivek might know better than I would.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Go. Sorry.
I was just going to see if I could clarify on the submission with the pictures. The second picture in that, the east elevation, it looks to me as if you're going to be adding on to the section that faces us on that east elevation, where there's a door and the little garden statue there. And if that's the correct elevation, am I correct in assuming that the tree in question is the large tree on the other side of that fence?
It is, but from that particular picture, you can't really see it. The tree you see there in that picture is on our property.
But that tree, I guess, when I look all the way at the bottom of that picture, that looks like a fairly large tree on the other side of the fence.
God bless your eyesight. Yeah.
Or maybe the very last picture, the north elevation.
Yes.
Is that potentially the tree?
Yeah, it's not even, I mean, if you look, let's say, it's not, the tree is not even level with the property. It's east of the property, if you like.
Mhm.
And
East? Your
Well,
tree or my tree?
if you look at it, it's if you take the easterly wall of that east elevation, I think the tree is closer to the water than the elevation of the carriage house.
Yeah,
Just trying to find a spot. We're just trying to find a spot where to help the board here, you know, kind of get an idea of where that tree sits on the other side of the property line, I think is what we're trying to.
if you look at the north elevation, you see the tree on the left-hand side of the picture.
Okay.
It does appear to be, you know, on the ocean side of the carriage house and on the neighbor's side of the fence.
Yeah. But if you're looking at the north elevation and the north elevation photograph, you can see a tree, a slim tree. There's a generator just to the right of it. And to the left, you can see the fence. So the tree in question is well left of that.
Right.
So it's not even, if you like to call it, perpendicular to even the far end of the new foundation. Right? And when you look at that north elevation photograph, the tree you see on the other side of the fence is our tree. So the tree is from the current carriage house corner, it's quite a ways.
Mr. Miley, may I ask, do you have any objection to, since you have an arborist that you have a relationship with, would you have any objection to having him have a look at that tree and make a professional judgment as to whether or not the construction may impact it?
I mean, sure, but let me just say, arborists won't give you that kind of an opinion. They will give you an opinion about whether the tree is living or dying, whether the tree needs some trimming or adjustments, or to be cut down, or to be wired, or whatever it may be. But with regard to where the roots are and involving a construction project, there's no way an arborist is going to give a professional opinion, because their liability wouldn't cover that. That's not something that I believe typically they would do. But in our case, we asked about those trees in relation to our overall management of the trees on the property. And we didn't get a sense that there was an issue in relation to that. I mean, look, I've done a lot of construction around trees, and trees of this size, that far away, with this size and scale, small scale of a foundation, you would have to say it's a bit of a stretch to think that there will be any impact on a tree of this size at that distance away. And I don't know how you would go about getting a professional opinion in relation to that, but certainly happy to look at any suggestions that the board may have in relation to that.
Yeah, and I guess where I'm coming from, and maybe this is more board deliberation, but you know, I'm not trying to slow this down or complicate this process, but you know, no one on this board is an expert on trees, and clearly there's a concern from the neighbor about the health of that tree. And you know, I work with folks, I guess, who are experts in trees, and you know, from what I hear, roots typically will span the same area as the canopy. So if the canopy is over this expansion, you know, I guess there is the potential. And again, I'm not an expert. This is just things I've picked up through my profession. So, you know, I think there's value in in getting a professional opinion. Maybe it's not an arborist, maybe it's a landscape architect who understands these trees a little better, but I think that would be worthwhile. And again, I'm not trying to slow this down. Maybe it's a condition of approval. And if you can provide something to Ben that says someone's looked at this and they don't think it's going to be a problem, then it goes ahead. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, but wait a second. What kind of professional opinion are we talking about here, and who would have the authority to definitively know
I'm
that?
thinking a landscape architect would.
I don't think so. Why would they know that? I mean, trees grow in different ways. How about we open the foundation, and as a condition of doing it, we take a look to see what we find when we come to the roots. After all, those roots are on our property. And we have some rights in relation to the roots and the canopy. So that's a bit unfair.
Yeah, I understand your side of this as well, and I'm certainly no expert on on who has rights over a tree that's on a property line. I'm sure that fight has been fought many times over the years, but.
So Mike, I think we can actually move, we can wait on this until board discussion, I think, on some of these matters.
Sure.
I think if we have any questions for the neighbor, now's the time to ask them. Get some more information if we want to, but we can talk about how the ordinance interacts with this during discussions. Anybody else? Any other parties would like to be heard? No. Ben, did we receive any submissions from the public on this?
Be nice to take a look at the
I did not.
Okay.
architectural plan.
Is the
Sorry. Hello?
Chair, I have a question for the applicant.
Yes, please.
Mr. Miley, on the photos that we were just talking about, on the south elevation, off to the right, there's a little umbrella that looks like for a table or chairs. And then right behind there, there's a tree that looks like to be on the corner of essentially the new foundation for the expansion of the carriage house. Is that right? All right, and so yes, but that tree, if the application is approved, that tree is going to be removed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank
Yeah. And
Okay, so we have, Ben, we haven't heard from any of the members of the public.
Let's see, the same neighbor has her hand up again.
Okay,
Would you want to recognize her?
yes, please. Go ahead.
Let's see. Okay, Ms. Kwan, are you there?
yes. Oh,
Okay. Did you have another comment or question?
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah, I would just be interested. I don't know whether it is possible just for Mr. Miley to share with us the plan that he has submitted with to the board, so that we can have a little better understanding of what's the extent of the
project
project
expansion.
with respect to the trees and property line, etc. I mean, I'm not trying to be difficult. It's just that we don't know. I mean, we haven't seen the plan.
Yeah, I could email you his plans tomorrow, or you could come into town hall anytime to look at them on paper.
What do you want to do?
Oh, email is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, we're not trying to disrupt or slow things down, but we're not familiar with this process, and it occurred to us that the proximity of the expansion, because the carriage house is not within the traditional modern setback that the expansion would be under the canopy of our big maple, sugar maple. And we can imagine that could impact the health and longevity of the tree. So we just wanted to know how deep the foundation is, what kind of impact the distance and the length and the depth of the digging would be, and where the equipment would be in terms of how it relates to impacting the roots or the tree.
And I would think a landscape architect would know something about this sort of
Yeah.
issues. I mean, if an arborist doesn't want to give an opinion, I think, I mean, a landscape architect would be the most suitable person. But again, I've never done this before, but it seems like the common sense would say that a landscape architect would have that type of knowledge.
Yeah, because they would know the construction and also the impact on the natural growth. I have a brother who's a landscape architect and he deals with this kind of thing. They not only plant trees, but they have to deal with the existence of growth and the impact on existing growth.
The foundations is going to go 4 feet deep. The footing will be 4 feet deep and it'll extend 12 feet. He's extending the face of the carriage house 12 feet towards his house.
Yeah.
And so the setback will be the same as the current carriage house from the property line?
Be greater.
Yeah, it's moving away from the property line. It's the addition is on the side of the carriage house that's further from your property line. And that face of the carriage house is extending. So as the building gets larger, it moves away from your property line, the construction.
Oh, so it's hard to talk in the abstract, but will the current footprint of the carriage house be expanded any further towards the water?
Yeah, that's what it is.
I mean, no,
Yes.
it's setback. But it continues that line, but also expands into the driveway, what the Mileys have as a current driveway.
Yes,
I see. Okay, so the expansion of the line from the current setback is going to continue towards their house.
yes.
Okay, I get it.
Okay. I think we can move on to board deliberations.
Sorry, Chair, I believe the applicant had his hand raised.
Okay,
Just
I don't
wanted
see
to
it.
give that opportunity.
I'm sorry, Mr. Go ahead.
Thanks for recognizing me. Sorry to belabor this. The tree that we were talking about that's on our property will be removed anyway. And the reason it's going to be removed, it's one of the trees that is hanging over the existing carriage house and it's a little bit dangerous. So we are removing that tree anyway, which will involve taking the tree out and stump grinding down to remove the tree in any event. And so it's between the foundation and the roots of the sugar maple. Just as an aside, I thought it might be worth mentioning, because it's on our list of trees that need to be taken care of. We had one come down this past winter right into the driveway, not a huge piece, but it was substantial. Probably the caliper on the branch that came down was probably over a foot. And it can do a lot of damage if it hits property or cars or whatever. So just watching these older trees, and that one is slated to come down. And so that this foundation area will be impacted in any event. Thought it worth mentioning.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miley.
Thank you.
So let's open up some board deliberation.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question actually directed to Ben. Ben, are there any of the criteria that we're looking at for approval of this project that are implicated by this tree issue? In
No,
other words,
I don't believe there is.
Chair, just a point of reference, and I hope it's a fairly clear point for property rights, is that I'm not talking about organic growth on the property line. I'm talking about a thing that's growing on your property. And then homeowner rights are fairly broad as to what they can and cannot do. The foundation for the addition is close, as it were, because it's partially in the setback, but it's further away from the large tree on the neighbor side. And plus there is a fairly large tree going to be removed anyways. And so that there will be some disruption to the earth there. I can see some sensitivity as to the old tree being continuing a long life with the neighbors, but that I'm troubled with the conflict that a homeowner cannot do what he or she may wish to do with their own property line. So I'll just put that there. So I'm a little troubled by the requirement for an opinion to say whether there's going to be interruption to the tree or not. Because it's on the applicant's property line where the disruption is. I think that, not to be, the pun is, it's almost like an overreach. So I'm troubled with the requirement for some sort of opinion here. Otherwise, I think the formalities are met here. But I could be, subject to the other opinions of the members of the board on this. Those are my points.
I agree with Matt. I don't really see anything in the ordinances that we have to look at for any sort of underground growth of tree roots. And no matter where you're building, excavating, there's always going to be something going on. And if we talk about a limit of anything that's under a canopy, that covers a lot of people's land, and to control kind of development that is kind of beyond our scope here. I don't think there's really anything we should do about requiring some sort of consultation, because as the applicant had said, arborists, and again, I'm not an expert, but to put pin on an expert to kind of give a definitive opinion of whether this tree that's however many feet away and whatever age is going to be impacted or not impacted by this project is kind of beyond an application like this.
Aaron, may I?
Yes.
Oh, so I don't disagree with you. I'm usually one all for owners' property rights. In this case, I think, and let me point out, this is not a simple issue where the applicant wants to expand his building within, in a conforming way. We're dealing with a non-conformity here. He's too close to the property line, which is why he's before us. We've got a tree very close to the property line, and I'm sensitive to the argument. I think Joe pointed out there's nothing that mentions trees, close to the property line that we need to consider. However, to me, common sense says if this is going to have an impact on a 100-year-old tree, and I'm not so much talking about the nostalgia or the fact that someone cares about this tree. I'm thinking more along the lines of it turns into a safety issue where the tree starts to die, and then you've got a dying tree hanging over your brand new or expanded carriage house. It's my opinion that there are professionals who do exactly this. They evaluate this sort of things. And in my opinion, it's not too much of an ask to have someone look at it. In fact, I think it would benefit everyone, including Mr. Miley, to learn, what a professional might say about putting a foundation over the root structure, or maybe someone comes out and says, yeah, no, given the condition, we don't think the root structure extends to this area. We just don't have enough information on it in front of us right now. We sort of see pictures of this tree in these photographs, but really can't tell where it is relative to the expansion. So that's where I'm coming from, but I respect everyone else's take on it, and certainly respect Mr. Miley's rights to do what he wants to, what the ordinance allows him to do. And as far as the rest of the application, I think clearly in all other terms, I think this is certainly an approvable application. But I would feel more comfortable if someone were to look at that tree before construction happened. Thanks.
Any further board discussion?
Kevin has his hand up.
Kevin?
Oh, thanks. I actually tend to agree with Mike. I mean, if this did not require board approval, if the setback here was met and, completely conforming, Ben would just issue a building permit and be off with this, and there wouldn't be an issue of I call it the homeowner rights, but it does encroach into that space, and therefore I would agree with Mike. It's not really a significant burden, to think of a condition here that I would make it as broad as possible. Some sort of licensed professional, was consulted prior to issuance of a building permit, and a plan put into place to as best care for the tree as possible. Not limiting the right to build, not limiting the right to put the foundation where it needs to be, but potentially there's a way for this to be done better. Maybe it's a smaller foundation that then has structure that's cantilevered over it, and it actually reduces the cost to the homeowner here, or there's something else there, or it may just not be a problem at all. The thing is, none of us really know. And you can have a landscape architect come in and say, hey, it's 20 feet away. Maybe we do, a spot treatment of fertilizer. I mean, there's value to that, I think, for all parties, including the applicant, including the neighbors, and really the town, here. So I would be supportive of that. I do think it's a very well prepared application, and otherwise, it is in approvable form. So that's my 2 cents on this.
Mr. Chair, I'll point out that Ms. Kwan's hand is raised again, but I think we're done with the public comment section of this, but I will point that out.
I think we can.
Yeah, I just,
Go ahead, Joe.
Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I am not unsympathetic to the Kwan's concern here, but I just don't see the jurisdictional handle for us to get at it. Maybe that's just an oversight in our regulation. I mean, it does talk about, the structures on a neighbor's property. It doesn't really say anything about potential impacts on their vegetation. So I guess I see this more as, we're not validating. If there's an issue between the neighbors here, then they still have to work it out. But in terms of what we're capable of doing, I'm not sure what we would do with the information that an arborist or a landscape architect might give us if we don't have any kind of, like I say, jurisdictional handle to do anything with that information. So, I'm inclined to just, to approve it and to let the neighbors work it out on their own.
I'll also, and thanks, Joe. Just on that point, following up with some of the things that other people have said, let's say an arborist looks at it. Well, what if the arborist says, no, it's going to kill the tree, or no, there's going to be some major damage? There's still nothing that I don't think we can do as a board about that.
I don't know.
And that's going to end up being a neighbor and neighbor interaction.
I mean, it does have here under the enlargement clause the criteria in 1943B2 which does include the type and amount of vegetation to be removed. I mean, that's not, I think, direct corollary, but it does consider vegetation, and it does not say on-site vegetation. I would just point that out. I don't know that it's super clear either way, but I don't think that the ordinance is completely silent.
I'm going to jump in here, and my apologies for joining late.
Mike,
All of those who were surprised that Mike Valancourt had some technological difficulties, raise your hand. Okay, nobody seems surprised by that. Thank you, Matthew. I appreciate it. I feel as though once we start getting into these vegetation questions, I feel like we end up in like planning board world. And the planning board would typically deal with what's going on with plants and trees and everything else. I'm an Oxford County boy. We cut trees down up there. I'm not going to let one tree hang me up on this application. So that's where I'm at with it.
Chair, I have a follow-up question for you.
go ahead.
Or comment. The point that you raised this point earlier, and I just wanted to develop it, is that suppose that we include a condition that the applicant has to get an opinion by some professional who says that the enlargement of the carriage house will or will not impact a neighbor's tree on the neighbor's property. And then what? That means that the applicant is prohibited from, private enjoyment of his property. So, and then you start thinking, hold on, that can't be right, because it can't be that a tree next door can impact your activities by home ownership. The second thing is that I suspect that there is really a main law that says if you chop down a tree on someone's property, then you have to pay for it, or you poison it, or you chop off the limbs, but essentially anything that's on your property line and inside, that's your property, including the roots and part of the canopy of your neighbor's tree. So I'm really struggling. I'm sympathetic for the tree to survive as long as possible, but I don't see the remedy of getting an opinion resolves the problem, because if it's a great opinion for the applicant, great, it resolves the issue. But what happens if it's not? And then the applicant is prohibited from private enjoyment. And we're reading into the ordinance a provision that I don't see in the text. It could be implied, but in the language anyways, I don't see it. So that's my point, is that I too is struggling as to the remedy that would be available to the applicant if he does not obtain a favorable opinion. So there we are.
Any further discussion? Okay, not hear any. Somebody want to make a motion on this matter?
May I have, let me just say one more thing. Matt, I understand what you're saying, and as well as Joe. I think you both make a good point, and I agree. It's a tough situation, and maybe, from my perspective, more information is better. And maybe we walk away from this, or maybe Mr. Miley walks away from this with an approval, but a strong recommendation, at least from me, for whatever that's worth, to look at what the impact will be on that tree. Because if, for instance, that side of the tree starts to die and drop limbs in the canopies over the building, that's something I'd want to know going into it, and maybe something can be done proactively to help the tree, survive that. Maybe it can be limbed on that side or something like that. I don't know, but again, I think you, Matt, and Joe made some good points, and you know, it's not something I'm willing to fall on my sword over here. You know, otherwise, I think it's a solid application. So that's where I'm at.
Jared, I had a question for
Yes, Matt.
a follow-up point. You know, it's the applicant can certainly invite his neighbors over with his arborist over there and have a chat about the tree and what to expect and the longevity of the large tree. You know, I'm all for good neighbor relationships, and that, you know, it doesn't sound like there's an issue here, but open discussion and having, you know, a flow of information from the arborist to the neighbors would be helpful. So perhaps the applicant could consider that as well.
I would just echo that, that I think that good neighborly relationship, I think that it's worth, you know, probably the couple $100 it would be to have somebody consult on this. And just to address your point, I mean, you know, I am all for everybody's enjoyment of their property. But again, we wouldn't be here if this wasn't already too close to the lot line. And I do think that that requires a higher threshold, frankly, of what those property rights look like, because by their nature, then you have to come before a board to really exercise those rights. So if there were no expansion, everybody would be fine. If it was a conforming structure, everything would be fine and it were being expanded, but it's not. And so I do believe it's not overly burdensome to require some additional diligence as part of that. But again, I'm not going to fall on the sword. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. I would love for there to be a condition, but if there's not a condition, I still think it's an approvable application.
Just one more point, Mr. Chair.
Good, Mike.
I feel as though if we're changing the overall look of the property, if that's what the applicant is talking about, and talking about, you know, multiple trees coming down and a lot of change to the landscape, I think that's one thing. And I think that's something that we want to be diligent about and we want to keep our eyes on. But we're talking about one tree here. And I don't want to hang up the application on that one tree. And that's where I'm at with it.
Mike, I'm not sure if you joined before or after the sort of explanation of this, but this tree is on the abutting property, and the neighbor has raised concerns over the health of this tree. This is not Mr. Miley's. Well, the trunk is not on Mr. Miley's property, so that's the nuance here. I think, at least in my mind. I think. Right. Otherwise, Mr. Miley could go cut it down. Like he is going to remove one tree, and I don't think anyone on the board has an issue with the one tree that's on his property coming down. And frankly, I don't have an issue with the tree in question coming down either. But if the neighbors want to keep it and they're interested in the health of this tree and they have concerns that the expansion is going to impact the health of the tree. That's where it gets sticky for me anyways.
Yep,
I just didn't know if you had heard the whole story because of your technical issues.
Technical issues there were. No, and I appreciate the clarification. And I've done some tree work myself legally, and I think Matthew mentioned how all of that works, and effectively, I understand the concerns over the tree. I get that. But Mr. Miley, he has property rights, and my feeling is that he should be able to take these steps to do what he wants to do with his expansion. And as I think some of the other members have mentioned, he'll need to have conversations with the neighbors potentially about how all that plays out, and what they do ultimately. But it's his property, and if the roots are at one point or another, I just feel like we can't hang up an application based on a tree.
Any other board discussion? Okay, not hearing anybody. Would someone like to make a motion for this matter?
I feel like we're more split on this one than we have been in a while. So I'll make a motion, and I guess we'll just kind of see where it goes. To approve the request of David and Brenda Miley, owners of the property at 886 Shore Road, map U05, lot 2, to enlarge a carriage house on their property based on sections 19-4-3.b.4 of the zoning ordinance. And my dog is barking his head off, so I'm gonna go let him out. But you know how I feel about this, and I will be right back. I'll let you guys carry on. I'll be right back.
I'll second the motion.
So is this where we vote on the motion, or do we want to have discussion on the motion? I think we've already had our discussion. That's why I ask. Okay, so all in favor?
Colin,
How many? I can't see on Zoom here. Can we tell?
It's
Colin is yay.
if Mike Valancourt says it.
I think we should do a roll call here.
Okay, so Aaron Mosier, aye.
Michael Tadema Wieland, I vote in favor.
Kevin Just in favor.
Just so I'm clear, we're voting on my motion.
Yes.
Okay.
Colin Powers,
I'm in favor.
Colin Powers in favor.
Matthew Caton, aye.
We have Joe. Joe, can you turn unmute yourself?
Joe Barbieri, aye.
I think that's it. That's all, everybody? Yeah, so the motion passes unanimously. Now I'll read the proposed findings of fact. Proposed finding of fact number 1, potential spam. Let's get rid of that. Number 1, the property is a conforming lot in the RC zone. The property contains a single-family dwelling and a carriage house. Number 2, the existing carriage house does not meet the side setback requirement. The owner would like to expand the carriage house without getting closer to the side property line. Additional findings of fact. Number 1, the Zoning Board of Appeals has considered the size of the lot, the slope of the land, the potential for soil erosion, the location of other structures on the property and on adjacent properties, and the impact on views. Number 2, the proposed structure will not increase the nonconformity of the existing structure. Number 3, the proposed structure is in compliance with the setback requirement to the greatest practical extent. Number 4, the building reconstruction meets the setback to the greatest practical extent based on the criteria in section 19-4-3.b.2 in the zoning ordinance. Do I have a motion to approve the findings of fact? Oh, go ahead, Joe.
I have a comment.
Yes.
I would propose an amendment. I'm going to have the same comment on all 3 of the findings of fact today. On number 4, under the additional findings of fact, first of all, I think we've described this as an enlargement, not as a reconstruction. So I would suggest that we substitute the word enlargement for reconstruction. And also, we make the finding based on section B2, when in fact we're really approving it under section B4. Now I know B4 incorporates B2, but technically it's under B4. In fact, at the beginning of I think the application, even on the matter before the board, we described this as being before B4 of the ordinance. That's the one that deals specifically with enlargement. So I would say either we can substitute B4 for B2, or we can say, B2 and B4 in the zoning ordinance. But I think we do need to reference B4.
I think just, from the historical standpoint, we used to enumerate all of the items in B2 because it's incorporated by reference as B4. And so just referencing B2 was faster and maybe easier. It's a little funky, but I actually think this is right. We've approved it under section 1943B4, but that section also makes us incorporate everything that's listed in 1943B2. But it feels weird. I agree, Joe. It always feels weird to say the building reconstruction, and maybe we should just say the building enlargement. Meets the criteria as established in 1943B2.
I don't want to get into an angels on the head of a pin discussion. Part of the reason why I think it's good to put in B4, I mean, we can leave in B2 and put B4 because there is that additional foundational requirement that's specific to doing reconstructions and enlargement. So it just seems, it's kind of, like I say, it really comes into play, but it is there. And so if you just look at B2, you don't have that foundation issue because that deals with relocation, I think. But B4 specifically deals with reconstruction. It does have this foundational requirement. So it seems like we need to improve it under B4. Or both B2 and B4.
So, so you're still, Joe, you're still proposing a changing number 4?
Yes, I would change it to say the building enlargement meets the setback to the greatest practical extent based on the criteria in sections 19-4-3 point B, .2 and 19.4-3 B, .4 in the zoning ordinance.
Okay, some discussion about that. Are we okay with that, those changes?
Yeah, I agree with you, Joe.
I think I do too.
Good.
So,
Second.
so now then, oh, go ahead, Matt.
No, I second the motion then. The
Okay.
amended motion from Joe.
Okay, so I'm going to read it straight out now. So it's going to be number 4. We'll modify to read, the building enlargement meets the setback to the greatest practical extent based on the criteria in section 19-4-3.B.2 and section 19-4-3.B.4 in the zoning ordinance. Period. Okay. So do I have a motion to approve these findings of fact as discussed?
So moved.
So moved.
You have a second?
Either myself or Joe can do this.
Second.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. And so all in favor? Aaron Mosier, aye.
Kevin
Joe
Johnson,
Barbieri, aye.
Mike Tadema Wieland, aye.
Mike Valencourt, aye.
Colin Powers, aye.
Matthew Kane, aye.
I think I lose track of everybody. I'm sorry. I think that's everybody. Okay. So
I think
motion
we've got,
passes
I think we've got a whole
unanimously.
screen full of eyes, right?
Yes. Okay. Okay, the motion passes unanimously. So I think Mr. Miley, we're approved. You're still there.
Still here. I was on mute. Thank you, members of the board, staff, Ben, Carmen. I appreciate your time tonight, considering the application, and thanks for your work.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night. All right, let's move on to the second matter. Number 2, to hear the request of Margaret and Ogden Williams, trustees of the Margaret Williams Living Trust, owner of the property at 5 Beach Bluff Terrace, map U10, lot 35, to enlarge a non-conforming single-family dwelling on their property based on sections 19-4.3 1.b.4 of the zoning ordinance. Ben, can you tell us about this one? Ben.
I'm wondering if you can see us.
Oh,
I cannot see you. You may have to click turn on video. There's a
Oh,
button maybe in the lower left. There you
there you
go.
are.
all right.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
So Mr. and Mrs. Williams came to me several weeks ago wanting to expand a covered porch on their house, basically just square off the front of their house that's along the road. And in their house, another house that was presumably built around 1950. I'm not exactly sure. It's a very old house without, original documents. And it's too close to the front setback with Beach Bluff. They have a frontage on Shore Road that they will meet that setback, but the frontage along Beach Bluff, they do not meet that setback. And this is a non-conforming lot in the RA zone.
okay, welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Williams, sorry. Tell us about your project.
Yes. Thank you. And happily, there are no trees within 40 or 50 feet of our proposal. I will say, I think our house was built in 1904. Hopefully, not seeming like we're trying to butter you up, but we'd like to begin by expressing appreciation for the work you do in service of this board. We understand this is a volunteer commitment that must involve a lot of time and energy, and sometimes the payment is probably gripes and controversy. Peggy and I have lived here at 5 Beach Bluff for 29 years. And for many years, we never really used our porch, and which faces our yard and gardens, and beyond that, Shore Road and the Shore Road path. Shore Road is approximately 120 feet away from the porch. 9 years ago, we suddenly asked ourselves, why are we not using this porch? And we had it screened in, and pretty much every evening, every single evening from late spring to early fall, we sit out there for an hour or so in the evening. The porch is 17.5 feet long and 6.5 feet wide. And for some time, we've wished it was wider, which would make it easier to have chairs and little tables out there, little folding tables, and still be able to move around without acrobatics just to get from the porch back into the house and out again. It would also give us better views of our gardens, which we have devoted a lot of time and energy to. The porch is currently recessed 4.5 feet back from the east-facing wall of the house, and we propose to extend the porch that additional 4.5 feet forward toward Shore Road so that it would be flush with the already existing wall. My description should make more sense if you see the photographs or diagram that we included. Our septic system, by the way, is about 80 feet away from that side of the house and where the porch would be. We understand the house is closer to the street than current setback regulations allow. We recently had a property survey done, and the survey shows our proposal would not infringe any closer to that setback or that line than it currently does. Our proposed extension does not involve jutting out farther from the present house footprint. It simply would bring that part of the house flush with the existing section. we don't think the extension would affect anyone else's views or quality of life or vegetation, except for what we would have to remove just to move forward 4.5 feet. I should mention that we feel our porch is actually, in a small way, a positive addition to the life of the Beach Bluff Terrace neighborhood. Thanks to the Shore Road path, which we supported, neighbors on Beach Bluff Terrace often walk back and forth on the street within conversational distance of our porch in late afternoon or evenings in the summer on their way to the path. And we typically see these neighbors and they see us, and we greet each other as they pass by in that front of the little gap in the bushes, which largely screen this porch from view on Beach Bluff Terrace. And we've had many wonderful catching up type conversations with neighbors in those times, the sort of pleasant interactions with good neighbors that make Beach Bluff Terrace a terrific neighborhood. We have spoken to the neighbors who are nearest to where the porch extension would be, and they have no problem with it. In fact, they said they thought it was a good idea. And that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So to the board, does the board have any questions for the Williamses? Hearing none. Ben, do we have any members of the public wanting to weigh in?
There is one person with their hand up.
Okay.
It's wheel C. So is that person there? Let's see. Wheel C, are you wishing to speak?
You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I believe they have themselves muted.
Yeah, they do.
So I think they had their hand up at the end of the last agenda item. So
Okay.
they may have just left it up.
Okay. Okay. Ben, did you receive any submissions, comments?
No, I didn't.
Okay, not hearing anything from the public on this. The board deliberation, what do we think?
All right,
Go ahead,
Mr.
Kevin.
Chair, I realize I have one quick question, and that is whether or not the stairs to the porch are also being extended, or it's just the porch.
No, those stairs would remain, but they would not be changed.
Frankly, this is one of the best put together applications I can remember seeing. Nice signed stamped survey, shows where everything is. I got nothing.
Okay.
I'm good with it.
Kevin, you are always a fool for a good application, aren't you?
Yeah.
I'll jump in here. I didn't see any proposed plans. I see the survey. I see a photograph of the survey. But Ben, did we receive, or maybe any other members of the board, am I just missing a proposed plan here? I think I understand what the proposal is, but it's nowhere have I seen a line drawing that sort of shows it.
Like I was kind of going off the survey has like a dotted line, I think, where it's proposed to be.
Yep.
Yeah, it's more described. There isn't a clear elevation drawing.
Or plan for that matter.
They show Yeah, I mean, basically, they're using a description rather than a drawing. You can see the photo of the screen porch, and they want to extend that to square off the house.
Yeah, I think I understand the proposal. It looks pretty simple. It looks very straightforward. I think when we go down through our findings or you know, the criteria, I think it meets the setback to the greatest practical extent. I just have one sort of comment, I guess. I'm looking at the survey, and the survey labels, oh geez, which way is north on this? Okay, so the survey labels the southwest corner of the house as 7.0 feet from the front property line. And it labels the porch what looks to me like 6.8 feet from the property line, from the front property line. Can I get confirmation of that? Well, I mean, and I guess my point, if that's the case here, then the southern face of the house is not parallel to the property line. And if that face is simply extended east or towards Shore Road, in fact, I think it's going to continue to get closer to Beach Bluff Terrace, to that right of way, to the front property line. I think a plan, you know, a construction plan would either prove that to be true or not true, one way or the other. But where, you know, again, the face of the house and the front property line are converging because they're not exactly parallel. And I just fear that this expansion will increase the non-conforming. I don't know if anyone else is looking at that the same way I am, but.
Chair, I have a follow-up to Mike's comment.
Go ahead.
We could add, may I suggest adding a condition to the findings of fact, or however we describe it, that we just state, as you described it on the survey that provided, that the enlargement can be no closer than 6.8 feet to the property line.
Yeah.
Or no far, or whatever it is, closer, farther, whatever. And that they're on notice. And I think that should address your point that you're raising.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that, but again,
Eagle eye, Mike, well done.
I think a plan here would have been very sort of helpful. But yeah, I agree with you, man. I think this probably can be handled with a condition, and Ben will just have to confirm it. I mean, clear, you're going to get building plans when the building permit application comes in, Ben, presumably. So
Yes.
you'll have a chance to review it at that point.
Yeah, I'll get building plans, and that's a simple condition to enforce at the time of permitting.
And do you understand my point? Do you see?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, basically the line is not parallel. It's not parallel with the property line. Yeah. Okay.
So I just wanted I want to be very clear on this point. Are we suggesting, based on Ben's comment, that we don't have to deal with this in the findings of fact, because it's going to be a requirement when Ben considers the building permit that he issues? No, so it has to be dealt now.
I think it should be dealt with now, just as a belt and suspenders type thing.
Okay, I'm with you. Yep.
Okay. So, Michael, do you have wording for that additional finding of fact? We can talk about that when we get to the list. Okay. So any more discussion? No? Okay, would someone like to make a motion on this matter?
sure. I'll move that we approve the application.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aaron Mosier, aye.
Kevin Just, aye.
Joe Barbieri, aye.
Should there be a condition on this approval, or can we deal with the what we just talked about in the findings of fact? I'm not so sure. In my opinion, it would be a condition of approval, but correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not always.
Yeah, Michael, I think you're right, Michael. We should, we can add a condition in on this. I don't know that it's a finding of fact issue. If we should probably add that as a condition.
Yeah. So may I add a friendly amendment to the
approval?
to the motion
The
to
motion.
approve?
At the second.
Thank you. So the condition would be the approval would be conditioned on the code enforcement officer confirming that the expansion does not increase the nonconformity with respect to the setback at the front property line. Is that satisfied everyone?
I believe so.
Yes.
And did someone write I can't even read the handwriting I just made. Seriously.
Hold on.
You sound like me.
Before we go to press, Ben, do you want us to repeat the point that Mike just raised? Because I just want to make sure that this will be on your plate after tonight as to what we're talking about. If you heard it in total, then we don't have to go further. You got it, and then we're fine. But if you didn't hear it and understand it, we should just take a moment to go back to you on this.
Yeah, my understanding is you're making a motion to approve with the condition that the expansion doesn't get nearer to the front property line than 6.8 feet.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I think what I have here is the application is conditional upon the CEO's confirming the expansion does not increase the nonconformity. Okay.
Yeah, I think I might also reference the nonconformity, what it is, and that nonconformity is the proximity to the front property line, or there's two front. There are two front, I guess, property lines. Is that right, Ben? When we have a corner lot, do we have two front?
Yes.
So in fact, we need to call it the Beach Bluff Terrace property line or right-of-way line. So Aaron, you want me to just start from scratch here?
Yeah. Hold
So
on a second.
the condition is that the code enforcement officer confirm prior to construction that the expansion is not closer to the property line adjacent to Beach Bluff Terrace than the existing structure.
Okay, so I have conditions that this code enforcement officer confirms prior to construction that the expansion is not closer to the property line adjacent to Beach Bluff Terrace than the existing structure.
That's what I intended, unless anyone else has comments.
Any more discussion, further discussion on that condition? No, okay. Okay, so I have not done the condition before. Go ahead, Matt.
Do you need a second for the friendly amendment?
I
Oh, you have a second. Go ahead, though.
second that, and I think looks like we're all on the same page.
I am, yes. Okay, so at this point, we've had a second on the condition on this amendment. And all in favor of the amendment as read, as written? Aaron Mosier, aye.
Joe Barbieri, aye.
Mike Tadema Wieland, aye.
Matthew Kate and I.
Colin Powers, aye.
Mike Valencourt, aye.
Okay. Kevin, you in there?
Yep, aye.
Okay. All right, so that motion passes unanimously. I think we can move ahead to the findings of fact. Okay. Okay, proposed findings of fact. Number one, the property is a conforming lot in the RC zone. The property contains a single-family dwelling and a carriage house. Number two, the existing carriage.
Wrong findings.
Are you reading the right one?
No,
I do think there may be some amendments when you do get the right one, but
I think you were reading the correct document, but there is a typo with extra language there.
I was actually literally reading the one from the last matter.
Yeah,
I'm looking for the right one too, Aaron. So
they're different zones here.
Yep.
yeah.
Okay, we're gonna start over here. Okay, now the proposed findings of fact, correct. Scratch that before. Number one, the property is a non-conforming lot in the RA zone. The property contains a single-family dwelling and a carriage. That's what it reads.
Just
I
read
know.
it in without the carriage house. How about that?
Okay. Number one, the property is a non-conforming lot in the RA zone. The property contains a single-family dwelling, period. Number two, I keep looking at the screen to see if anybody's. Number two, the existing house does not meet the front setback requirement. The owner would like to expand the porch without getting closer to the front property line. Additional findings of fact. Number one, the Zoning Board of Appeals has considered the size of the lot, the slope of the land, the potential for soil erosion, the location of other structures on the property and on adjacent properties, location of the septic system and other suitable soils, and the impact on views. Number two, the proposed structure will not increase the nonconformity of the existing structure. Number three, the proposed structure is in compliance with the setback requirement to the greatest practical extent. And number four, Joe, I'm going to make the changes that you recommended before. The building enlargement meets a setback to the greatest practical extent based on the criteria in section 19-4-3.b.2 and section 19-4-3.b.2 in the zoning ordinance. Do we have any discussion about those findings of fact?
I think you might have referenced B.2 twice, and
Mhm.
one of those needs to be B.4.
Oh, goodness. Okay. So we'll redo on number four. The building enlargement meets a setback to the greatest practical extent based on the criteria in sections 19-4-3.b.2 and 19-4-3.b.4 in the zoning ordinance. Any discussion on those? Okay. Having no discussion, do we have a motion for approving those findings of fact?
So moved.
A second?
A second.
Okay, all in favor? Aaron Mosier, aye.
Mike Tadema Wieland, aye.
Joe Barbieri, aye.
Colin Powers, aye.
Matthew Caton, aye.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sorry, my mute was on. Mike Valancourt, aye.
Okay. Motion now passes unanimously. Okay, I think we are set. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Williams.
Thank you. May I ask a couple of questions?
Sure.
Question one is, so we need to have an enforcement officer come and look prior to construction. I'm just wondering at exactly what point would be the best, what needs to be in place so that no construction will have taken place, but what needs to be in place at that point where the code officer can determine that it is not any closer.
Just give me a call tomorrow or the next day and we can talk about this in detail. It's relatively straightforward.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Masulowski.
Okay, next item, to hear the request of Kevin Brown Architecture representing Robert Warshaw and Debbie Schmidt, owners of the property at 10 Lawson Road, map U08, lot 23, to enlarge a garage on their property based on sections 19-4-3.b.4 of the zoning ordinance. Ben, can you tell us about this one?
Okay, there's an old garage right at the corner of this property that they would like to reconstruct and do a slight expansion of, change the roof pitch to get a loft above. And let's see, it's very close to the property line. It doesn't meet the setback to the front or side property lines. This is a non-conforming lot in the RA zone. They're not expanding the footprint of the garage. They're basically expanding it upward. And this, we could call this a reconstruction. I believe they are reconstructing it from scratch. So we probably should talk about it as a reconstruction. It's the enlargement of a non-conforming structure, but they are reconstructing it. So B2, B4, they both apply. We should just use them together, I guess, on this one.
Okay. Thanks, Ben. Kevin, let's hear about the project.
Thank you. Like it was mentioned earlier, I'm here representing Robert Warshaw and Debbie Schmidt. And we are hoping to save the walls of the structure and just taking basically the roof off and putting in a steeper pitch roof on, just for more so aesthetic value, but also a little bit more space in the loft space for more storage, if anything. This structure, it's a garage that's not being really used other than storage right now, will be sort of an insulated, a little more pleasing along the street level to be like a secondary music studio for the to practice music. And so again, it's a slight increase. The plate height of the walls do not change. The ridge changes about just shy of 5 feet at the highest point. And we're adding some windows along the side, but it's not a lot of windows. So I think that's, overall, we're not changing the footprint like was discussed earlier. The only thing that we are doing is removing the driveway in front of the structure and probably putting a small, like a little paver patio in there that's going to be actually less impervious than it's currently there. I think that covers it overall, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I've got just a quick question. Kevin, can you describe? So first of all, I think this is such a minor, at least from our perspective. There's not much to look at here. I think it'll be a nice project, but I guess the only thing that could be impacted with respect to these sections of the ordinance that we're reviewing this under are views. Can you describe sort of maybe the topography and the relative location of other structures around it and what views may or may not be impacted by this?
Yeah, no, definitely. So the structure is right on the street. It does the any kind of view that would be impacted would be, and really it sits lower than the house behind it, but it's the client's house, which is directly behind this garage and up the hill, probably I would say 5 to 8 feet higher in elevation. There is the only other possible, there's no view impact, I don't believe, to the neighbor to the left if you're looking at it from the street. But I would think that structure is probably about 40 to 50 feet away is my estimation. It's hard to really say exactly.
Mm.
And again, I think it's similar in height on the same sort of level of where it is, but I don't think they don't look over this structure, I don't believe.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, quick
Yes.
follow-up question.
Go ahead.
So Mr. Brown, is the bathroom in the garage, is that new or is that existing in the current garage?
That is new.
That is new, but you're not adding any bedrooms in its
No, it's just
design.
No, it's just merely a powder room to not have to run into the house.
Do you have the details of the septic design? Is that on file then?
It is on file. The house was rebuilt, I think, I don't know, Ben, if you can remember, I would say probably 4 or 5 years ago, maybe. And the septic field is, I think, in the front yard, just to the side of where this structure is.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Yep.
Chair, I had questions.
Go ahead, Matt.
So I just wanted to follow up a point that Kevin talked about, is that I would call this an accessory building or structure. It's defined in the ordinance. And just to put the applicant on notice that an accessory building or structure that has plumbing shall not be used for overnight accommodation. So it looks like it's just going to be used for French horn. I think I read that music lessons, as it were. That's fine. Could we just talk briefly about the driveway and the patio? I'm looking on page 9 of 13 of the PDF.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if I understand all these lines here, that the structure is about 2 feet 2 inches over to 2 feet 11 inches off the property line.
Correct.
Yeah. The patio that you're thinking about is not inside the property line.
Right.
So help me understand how you wish to install a patio on someone's property other than the applicant's.
Well, I guess we were thinking the driveway currently, it's not, the driveway is not depicted on the site plan. This is an older site plan. It's not depicted out how it actually is out there. The driveway is the width of what we're drawing for the patio. So we were covering over that. But I see what you mean about the patio being on outside the potential property line. So I don't know how that's, yeah, just like I guess could it be considered a driveway, just a different material though, I guess is the other question. But I don't.
I don't know that answer. I was just, you got me curious on how that's going to unfold, but
Good point.
I would, if I could interject, we may leave that answer up to the Public Works Director. I could put that out to him. That's his
Yeah.
jurisdiction. Your jurisdiction is the structure, and I could get his opinion on the driveway / patio.
Okay.
But if the board wants to continue discussing that, that's fine. But I think we could leave that up to the Public Works Director.
Matt, you said you had another question?
Those are the 2 points. One was the plumbing and overnight accommodation. And the second was the patio issue. I don't have other issues to raise other than the patio will probably need to be addressed in the findings of fact, or if we separate between the patio and the structure. That was my concern there, but I take Ben's point, so I don't think it's an issue in the grand scheme of things.
Okay. Any other, anything else for the applicant?
I think, sorry, Mr. Chair, one more thing that I think we consider as part of this is the foundation. And I would just, and I don't know if the applicant knows of this, it appears that the design includes a standard sort of footing type foundation. And I just was curious if, Mr. Brown, if you knew that if that foundation as drawn actually exists in the existing building, or if that's to be determined.
What we do believe is there is a frost wall foundation. I think you might be referring to the cross section that we might have in one of the drawings. And I think that, yeah, we don't know exactly what's underneath, but I believe there is a frost wall that we're going to just be utilizing.
Okay. I just wanted to check that off our list of things we were considering.
Right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Okay, thanks, Mr. Brown. Ben, have you heard from any members of the public?
I have not. There's one attendee with their hand up.
Okay, can you put that person in?
Okay, We'll See is the name on it.
Same person.
Is anybody there?
Yes, hello. My name is Mary Hutchison. We live right next door. And really our concern is the loft. And now that we didn't even know they were having a bathroom. So our biggest concern is if they sell. I know we don't have a crystal ball, but my concern is that if they're not supposed to use it for overnight accommodations, and that does happen, that was my biggest concern.
I could cover that if you want.
Please.
I think, the structure is 2 feet from the road, and it'll be very obvious if it's being used for overnight accommodations. So I think, that zoning measure that doesn't allow overnight accommodations in a structure with plumbing, I think by adding plumbing to this structure, it protects you as a neighbor so that this can't become a little Airbnb garage.
How does the plumbing protect me? I guess I didn't understand that, Ben.
The zoning provision that says if there's plumbing in an accessory structure, it can't be used for overnight accommodations.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
So,
Okay.
that's a recent zoning change for this specific issue of people renting out their garages on Airbnb. So the fact that they're proposing this in the open specifically prohibits them from being able to use this garage in this manner. So I think this process actually protects you from that more so than if they didn't do this.
Okay, that's great to know. Thank you.
So nobody else in the attendee room is raising hand. Okay, let's close the public comment portion. Let's move on to some board discussion. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
Sorry, I was muted. I said we have one more public.
Okay.
Here we go. Nancy Ruddy, hi.
Hi, I just wanted to say I live on the other side of Devon Bob, and we've looked at the plans. I really defer to Mary and Bruce Hutchinson because they're much more affected than us. On our side, we don't have any issue. And I think, as Mary said, the big thing is just, down the road, I understand it's not an Airbnb issue, but it's the kind of situation that, if somebody else used the space differently, given that there is a bathroom and so on, I understand what you're saying about it would be obvious if someone was staying in there, but if there were someone down the road who wasn't as respectful as Debbie and Bob are, because they're lovely neighbors, what would we do? Because the addition of the bathroom, I understand, on the one hand protects us, but on the other hand, it makes it something that is more likely to be used that way by somebody who might not even know there's such an ordinance.
Again, I just think it will be really blatant and obvious violation of the ordinance if this garage is being used for overnight accommodations. So I think it'd be very simple to enforce.
Yeah, I want to point out also, it looks to me like there's no shower in this bathroom. It's just a toilet and a sink. So that would make it sort of less, not that that would prevent it from being used that way, but it would certainly make it less desirable to use in that manner. So.
Just one more question.
Any other members of the public want to speak?
I have just one more question.
Sure.
Let's say we decided to add on, because this garage is already non-conforming and it's almost on our property line, would that interfere with us? Like, would they put that in consideration, like, oh, you're too close to this garage because that's non-conforming as it is?
It's my understanding that the footprint is remaining exactly the same. It's not growing in any direction.
Right, but it's not, it's grandfathered, so it didn't meet obvious zoning requirements because it's old. So my concern is future. If would that come into play for anything, you know what I'm saying? Because it's almost on our property line.
Ben is probably best to comment on this, but property line setbacks are specific to the property.
Okay, so it wouldn't come into play.
I think that's the answer. I think Ben will probably confirm that for us, but it's all per property is my understanding.
I would agree with that. And I don't think that, changing the pitch of the roof on this structure could in any way affect a proposed expansion on your property.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now we're closing public discussion, moving on to board deliberation. Anyone want to speak on this?
I'll speak just to move it along. I have no reservations on this application. I think it's fairly well done. We're becoming pretty well experienced on these type of applications, given the two applications this evening that came before. So I'm ready to move to approve, but I'll wait for the appropriate timing.
I'll just say I agree with Matt. I think this is pretty simple. I'm ready to move on it.
I second that. Where's that?
So would anyone like to make a motion to approve this application?
So moved.
Friendly amendment. I just wanted to just quickly look over the findings of fact and the issue here. I wanted to separate out the patio issue from the structure issue.
Yeah, I think it'd be pretty simple to say that, this approval pertains to the structure and jurisdiction of the patio lies with the Department of Public Works.
I'm not actually understanding why we need to actually mention that, because that's already the way it is, that Public Works would be dealing with that.
The reason that it's an issue because the application includes the patio at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we're approving the patio though.
I don't think so either.
But I mean, I'm not against your suggestion, Matt. But I'm fine with it either way, I guess. But I'm not as concerned as you are that we're approving installation of a patio in the right of way.
No, that's fine. Either or. The minutes have just recorded our discussion that our present intent is that we're not approving the patio. We're approving the structure and if there's any patio, it's the 2 feet strip in the front of the building and no more. But okay, we don't have to push that any further. Okay.
Okay. So do we have a motion to approve the application?
So moved.
First motion made by Kevin. Do you have a second?
Second.
Second from Joe, I saw first. Okay, so.
I'm in. My dog's raising hell again. I'll be right back.
We're going to vote, Mike. We're going to vote.
I'm in.
Oh, okay. So all in favor, I'm sorry. How do we read this? All in favor of this motion? Aye.
Aye.
Just aye.
Joe Barbieri, aye.
Michael Tadema Wieland, aye.
And the
That's Kane, aye.
Okay.
Colin Powers, aye.
Mike, you need to vote.
Didn't I already do that? I'm in favor.
Technically, it was after. It was before, rather. Okay. So
I know I'm not very good with parliamentary procedure tonight.
Yeah,
When you're running the show, Aaron.
Oh. So motion carries unanimously. So let's move on to the findings of fact. Proposed finding of fact number 1. And this is the correct sheet. The property is a non-conforming lot in the RA zone. The property contains a single-family dwelling and a detached garage. Number 2, the existing garage does not meet the front or side setback requirements. The owner would like to expand the garage upward without getting closer to the property lines. Additional finding of fact. Number 1, the Zoning Board of Appeals has considered the size of the lot, the slope of the land, the potential for soil erosion, the location of other structures on the property and on adjacent properties, location of the septic system and other suitable soils, and the impact on views. Number 2, the proposed structure will not increase the nonconformity of the existing structure. Number 3, the proposed structure is in compliance with the setback requirement to the greatest practical extent. Number 4, the building reconstruction meets the setback to the greatest practical extent based on the criteria in section 19-4-3.b.2 in the zoning ordinance.
One of us will chair. We have a friendly amendment.
Yep.
Could we include the word enlargement and reconstruction in number 4? and include probably 2, 3, and 4, B2, B3, B4, to cover all the bases that Joe and Kevin were about to talk about.
Thank you.
I wanted to make sure we got it 100% right, that mainly Ben, for your benefit and also for the applicant, so there's no, there's no question about what we're approving here. It's an enlargement. If the means of that enlargement is by reconstruction, we are approving the enlargement, whether it's just enlarging what's there or reconstructing and enlarging on exactly the same footprint.
Is that because it's being torn down and then reconstructed in the same place?
They don't know, I think, if it needs to be torn down, but if it
Yeah.
does, it would still just be an enlargement, whether through new materials or old, I guess. And I don't think we need it. I think the friendly amendment covers that. I just want to make sure that Ben, you agree that, I think that's all of our interpretation, so that you agree that that amendment covers exactly what we're approving.
Yes, and I appreciate you clarifying that.
Okay, so we're going to change that to enlargement and reconstruction. And B2, B3, and B4. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So, great. So number 4, the building enlargement and reconstruction meets the setback to the greatest practical extent based on the criteria in sections 19-4-3.b.2, 19-4-3.b.3, and 19-4-3.b.4 in the zoning ordinance. So so do I have a motion for approval of the findings of fact?
So moved.
Okay, and second?
Sorry, second. I was muted.
Okay, so motion made by Kevin and seconded by Mike. All in favor? Aaron Mosier, aye.
Joe Barbieri, aye.
Mike Tadema Wheeland, aye.
Kevin Just, aye.
Colin Powers, aye.
Matthew Kane, aye.
Is that it? I think that's everybody. Okay, so motion passes. Go ahead. Wait, somebody. So motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, guys.
Mr. Brown.
Have a good night.
Good luck with the project. Bye.
Thank you.
So,
Anything next month, Ben?
yeah, adjournment. Right.
Something next month, I'm not quite sure yet.
I'm just going to jump in here. My profound apologies for my belated joining here. And Aaron, thank you so much for running the meeting tonight. I'm sure, you're sitting here and you get on the meeting and you're like, oh, great, Valancourt's not here. So
Yeah.
now I have to deal with this. So thank you all. And I'll try to do a little bit better with my technology next time, as you all have witnessed. It's a struggle from time to time for me. So thank you.
Yeah. Get your dog under control too there, Mike.
Oh, yeah. So I'm gonna motion to send my dog off to one of you because he is driving me nuts right now. Yeah, you look like you need a dog. I'm gonna bring him right on over right now.
And don't forget, we have one more meeting this year, and I believe it's December 2nd. I'll double check and email you guys, but we combine the November and
Yeah.
December meetings.
And we know there won't be a middle school chorus conflict this year.
That's right.
And I'm gonna log in at probably 6 in the morning to make sure that I'm actually on the meeting. So I'll be here. I'll be here.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.